Hey, everybody. We have got with us longtime podcaster Chris Jordan from the Dudes and Beard podcast. He lots of projects on this man. HC Universal Network. You've also got Talking Sounds podcast and the No Disassemble websites. I mean, I don't know what this man does because apparently he hates free time. So he tries to keep busy as much as he possibly can. So we're going to find out what Chris Jordan is up to right now. Welcome to the Three Beards podcast. My name is Craig, along with Austin and Chris.
Passed to a new generation of Americans born in this century.
Let me out.
I'm afraid that is quite impossible. I need then live to send the innocent to their death? Is this justice and honor in Massachusetts colony?
All right. And at this time, I'd like to welcome Chris Jordan to the show. How are you, sir?
Doing great, guys. Thanks so much for having me on tonight.
Yeah, no. I mean, what's not to like? What's not to like? It's a guy that he says solve. Is it what I'm trying to tagline? I'm just going to butcher it right now, but basically it ends up with being 12 ounces at a time.
Solving the world's problems 12 ounces at a time. That's right.
That's right. Well, I don't know if you saw the promo I put up on there. I thought it was fitting. AC/DC's "Have a Drink on Me."
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
I
Absolutely.
went with that one.
We can be four beards tonight. I've got not quite the beard you gentlemen do, but it's there.
Well, everybody has to start. You have to have a start, and then you got to let it go. I mean, Austin's got the longest out of the three of us right now.
I guess I've never really just had the faith of heart to fully let it go. Well, probably because I don't really get a mustache. I've got more of the classic Abe Lincoln Amish beard, that's just right here. So
as long as you don't let it go all the way down here and you have the neck beard thing, you got to at least keep the neck trimmed up a little bit. You don't want that. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. It was one of those things that just through a mutual friend, Mark Eddy, he mentioned, about having Chris. So we reached out to you, and it was just, it's kind of in our endeavors to just kind of cross paths with different, just engage with the community, because when we set out, we just wanted to be three guys just talking about random topics, just doing something as we've morphed into this interview process and where we do interviews. It got to the point to where, and I'm sure you've encountered it, there is a large portion where it is mine only, do not, this is my thing. And we're like, why have this whole turf thing when we can work each other? Network. Because when you grow, it just makes all of us grow, because it helps the whole thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because I actually come from the world of broadcast in AV. Like, that's what I do for a living. And the world of podcasting kind of came secondary. I used to be a teacher. Talking Sound was the first podcast that I started when I left broadcast. I just wanted to, I guess, kind of start teaching the next rung of engineer how to get into the system and how to get into the world of engineering. How to even come together as a community of engineers and work together to help their AV community, be it video guys meeting sound guys, what have you. So it really started there, and things have kind of morphed over the last many years. That show's been going on. This is in the 7th year now. Dudes and Beers in its 5th, and even that was a show that morphed. It was very much like y'all's, where it started out with 3 people around a table. I had zero life. I was almost 40 years old. I went to gigs, I traveled, stuff like that. But aside from that, like, I didn't go out and socialize with people. You know, I didn't go out and do things. So it was like, man, I miss the conversation. I miss just sitting around with a couple people that, you know, just want to have a conversation and just sit back and have a drink. So I found a couple people like that we didn't necessarily agree on all topics, but we were willing to hear each other out. And that was really the idea, was come to the table with a couple topics that are in the news. Maybe we'll agree, maybe we won't. Even wild stuff from science. Bring a 6-pack, bring 2 topics, and we'll sit back and gab for an hour or so. Then that's right awesome. There, John Hall, you actually have him up on screen. He was one of the guests. Arshawn McCleskey, a former Secret Service agent that was here in Austin for a while. Now he lives down the road. He was one of the first guests that came on that was really like, wow, okay, we could open up a whole new conversation here. And he came on about identity theft and fraud and things like that. I'd met him at a conference that I was working, and that really kind of opened my eyes. Then we had like Billy Joe Kane from the Radical Empathy Foundation on talking about their work with human trafficking. And that was really our first, like, wow, this has moved something. And we started getting emails on our website from people about human trafficking and that were involved with human trafficking and how they could get a hold of Billy. And then we had Dr. John Hall on. Back in my broadcast days, I had booked him as a guest on a show, and we one night just got onto the topic of MK Ultra, things like that, you know. And I was like, hey man, you might think a lot of this stuff is crazy, but there is technology out there. Like, this stuff exists. If you want, I can try and get this guest on that I got on my previous broadcast that I worked on. So we got him on, and man, we got emails from like targeted individuals in Israel and stuff like that. And that was really the first time that things clicked to me that, wow, this conversation goes far beyond this table. The reach of this show goes far beyond this table. And that's when it became about the community for me, and building a community and really building that larger community for discussion and allowing people to come on the show that, yeah, maybe folks might not agree with, but this has been their experience, you know?
Yeah. No, I agree. Because it's, for me, that was just, I set out, when I mentioned to these guys, I mean, when I first really wanted to do this, it's just because I always listen to podcasts, and I wanted to, and it was one of those things, I always look up different shows, and I would have a hard time finding the show on the topic I'm looking for. And so it's one of those, well, if I can't find it, why not just do it?
Why not just do it?
And so we all worked together. And so we just, you know, I brought it up to them, and it kind of morphed from there. We went from just kind of random talking football to then we started doing MMA, and then it just got to the point to where we realized talking about the same thing every single time was not working. Yeah. And then this random topics things, now it's like, while there might be subjects that not all 3 of us are overly excited about, at least it's something that is not the same thing that we just talked about last week.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so,
and it definitely does make it a lot more interesting. I can tell you right now, since we started, especially with folks like Mark Eddy, our mutual friends, stuff like that, like, my God, I've literally had to buy a bookshelf. Yeah, simply because I do not I don't know. It's one of those things like I prefer at least reading the first 5 to 6 chapters of somebody's book so that I have a launching point of conversation. And from there, like, hey, through the natural course of conversation, we're going to talk about the rest of the book. You know, like we're gonna talk about the rest of your body of work, things like that, through the natural course of conversation. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, the worst thing you can do is, you know, like just like a little teaser, we're going to be talking about the Barney and Bitty Hill thing coming up in September. But, you know, they got the book, you know, they sent it to me. The worst thing you can do is if an author sends you this book, worst thing you can do is not even look at it, not even do anything with it, just set it on the shelf. And then when you come up, it's like, hey, I've got Kathleen Marden on tonight, and it looks like a fantastic book. I hope we'll have her describe it. What's the purpose of being on the show? If you haven't even taken the time to even crack it open and figure out what, you know, their take, because that's the whole point of having them on, is you want their take on a story. I go, they don't need to come on my show because I'm reading Wikipedia.
Yep.
Yeah, it's
you just gave me an idea. Start getting the books and reading the first 3 or 4 chapters. I mean, Craig reads the whole book, but I can read the first 3 or 4.
Yeah, and I mean, it's at the minimum that is what I can't even imagine having somebody on. Most of the time, just as a former radio producer and as somebody who booked guests for my host, my job, like I tell them most of the time, is I've been lightly Google stalking you over the last few weeks, and I start telling them the things that they posted about, that we post about in our community and things like that. They're like, oh, what? Wow. Sometimes they are amazed at the things that I've found out about them, because that literally used to be my job, was to come up with like an entire one sheet for a guest of like, here's everything about them.
That's, you know, some presses, they'll give you the pressers, you know, the talking notes, they'll give you these things. Yeah. And through talking with Mark, and I'm sure you've encountered this and stuff, there's nothing worse than this is your research. I've got you in the show, and this is all you know, because the author knows they wrote this. So they know this word for word. So when you're like, so Detroit, Michigan, there are more than, and you're reading this word for word, they know you haven't done a damn thing. You're simply going through the motions, and they're just like, I'm wasting my time. I'm absolutely wasting my time here.
Yeah. It is kind of funny to, and you know, as someone from broadcast, it's been interesting to kind of see the world of podcasting over the last, especially 2 years, really ramp up the way that it has and move into the realm of like almost 2 million shows being out there. Now, granted, most of those shows, I want to say like 70% of those shows do not stray beyond episode 10 to 15. Like if you look at all the charts, most of them, like once they get up around 20, where they realize like, wow, there's some like work involved with this. Normally the show stops. Or, you know, somebody's schedule didn't work out and they can't do a show without co-host. And, you know, like my show evolved to being a solo show, mainly because I ended up being on we used to be in studio together all the time around a table, you know, with the guest on via Skype, what have you. And then I started being on the road doing conferences like 35, 40 weeks a year. It got to where it was like, wow, if I'm home one Tuesday a month, why the heck am I paying for a studio?
Well, and that's, if we, you know, that was one of the dream goals. It's like, how cool would it be like the Joe Rogans and stuff like that, you know, and have these studios behind you. But beauty of like this thing like StreamYard is how the three of us are in our homes. Yeah. You know, we have our own spaces, you know, it's just, and we decorate it, you know, we're just, we're trying to get a different picture behind Chris. So he's just, you know, he wants something other than the vino, you know, the painting, you know, so he'll eventually.
What's wrong with Pottery Barn painting?
I know.
Yeah, My wife won't let me set up a studio. I'll be out the house in the garage. She's like, you can set up your own studio in the garage, but I'll be sweating like, oh, it's hot out here.
Oh yeah.
95 degrees in the Florida heat out in your garage.
Yeah.
So, I mean, until I get a studio, I mean, you got to get the audience before you get the studio. We talked about that a while ago. So, I mean, we're building.
We come a long way, especially me.
Oh yeah, no,
I've definitely seen you guys over the last little bit picking up largely within numerous communities online. So you guys have definitely been putting in your work, definitely been putting in the work on hosting and getting the word out there, things like that. So go ahead.
So the research you've done, you see like most podcasts fall off after like 10 or 15 episodes, maybe 20, you said?
Yeah. If you start looking at any like market statistics, things like that, like, and that's one thing about a lot of the platforms that are out there that are free based, where it's like, hey, yeah, come start your show for free. Man, it's rough because sometimes it'll end up like 6-7 months down the road. I remember Wooshka was one that started off as free, and it was in the Southern Hemisphere. It was out of Australia. Really good platform. I remember every show on my network had their own show. And within a year and a half, they were like, okay, we can't do free anymore. You're going to, like, you can have a show for free. That's it. And you can have like 3 episodes on. Like after the 4th episode post, the first one will go away. Go ahead.
I said, wow, that's crazy. I mean,
yeah. And a lot of those platforms, especially if you go start looking at them and start really digging through, a great meat of those shows are defunct shows. They're shows that were around for like 20, 30 episodes and they're gone. So you're kind of sharing the space with all of those, so it really comes down a lot to SEO, things like that. I mean, this is a lot of inside baseball, let's just say, when it comes to our industry of podcasting. It really does start coming down to owning your URL, owning your content, owning where it goes, all that kind of stuff.
Well, that's the thing is, it's when you start getting into things. I mean, when you have the money, you can start having everything, off of your own site. You get really expensive. I mean, we're just bare bones. I mean, we're willing to spring for StreamYard with the paid version. Sure. So otherwise, you have over your dudes and beer podcast thing right there that's sparkling. You would have a large duck right now blocking you right now if we had the free version. And so,
yes, you would. There it is. I know the duck.
Yep. Yeah. So it would be right there if you did the free one. So, so that's you're right. Like, so now it gave us that option. So you could do it cheaper, but I think, inside baseball, it's like right now our operating costs are right around, I would say $60 to $62, because we pay for Buzzsprout to put it out on all the podcast platforms. And then our website hosting through HostGator and through this. So when everything's said and done, it's right at about 61, 62 is what it's operating expenses. Okay. Yeah. So you could have the whole thing and it's just, nice. You get, but even then it's like I tell people, it's like, if you don't mind this, especially for people that are coming out, this is an awesome way to start out, because this
absolutely.
I mean, that was the thing that was so cool about StreamYard, and it is the fact that this allows anybody to go out and you have unlimited shows. It doesn't limit you to this many. Yeah. It just you just do it. But if you want to do your own theme, that's when you have to pay. But somebody just starting out, you can pump out 7 shows a week, once a day, no issues.
And if you're handy with other things like OBS, things like that, open broadcasting software, like you can do it without StreamYard. Bringing in virtual cameras from programs and using a free version of Skype to talk with a free version of Zoom, you could do it all in a Facebook room. I've been telling people that for the longest time. Like, hey, man, if you got Facebook Messenger and so does your guest, like in India, feel free to use it. It's a pretty banging connection. Like,
yeah.
You're
that's an awesome.
riding Facebook's airwaves, man. You think they aren't good?
Yeah. There's a lot of ways to do it, and I think a lot of people overthink, and that's kind of one of the reasons why I really was looking forward to having you on, is because this kind of helps people, because we have a few people in the audience that are kind of doing their own show, like April has Naturally April on Facebook, and it's given people this idea of how. I mean, I've had some people, it's like, oh, I love the way you guys do it. Just give me some hints. I'm like, I honestly, I'm not a professional. I go, this I use the term all the time, faking it till you make it. It is what it seems to be.
That's it. Yeah. And that's firmly understandable. I mean, most people are not, I'm not going to say not tech savvy, but they are not AV technicians. They are not like videographers by trade. They are not audio engineers. Like even myself with all this in the background, like I owned a live sound company for a decade.
That looks amazing though. Like I said, I do like it.
Well, I mean, that's just all my synthesizers and things like that for my music. But yeah, whenever people walk in and they're like, holy crap, because there's a matching one of those racks over here with effects and patch bays and mixing console. And it's like, well, yeah, but to be fair, like I owned a live sound company. A lot of this stuff was like vocal effects that lived in one road rack. Then I had another road rack in case there was a smaller gig. Then I had some stuff for my own personal use. So most of it was acquired prior to my marriage.
Yeah.
But at the same time, my wife is an artist. Like we started Podcast Cadet together because we both love podcasting. She has experience teaching people the world of improv comedy, sketch comedy, writing scripts, things like that. And I have experience teaching people tech and how to do this kind of stuff. So it was one of those between the people that we knew that were social media folks, between the people that we knew that were branding folk, stuff like that. It was like, why would we not start this? Like, it was one of those after 20 years of my life almost spent working in rock and roll in some aspect, whether it was live engineering, what have you. It was sad to me to see so many podcasters getting really, really bad advice from people. And no fault of their own. They are leaning on the community that they have, and most of their community is podcasters. And it's not that they aren't good, it's that are they branding professionals? Do they know how to brand a show? Do they know how to consider things like trademarking something? Going through and owning your content on your own URL. So for those people that were looking to kind of take things to the next level, it was like, where do you even go to find that stuff? Like, how do you find somewhere where you can find a graphic designer, a website designer, like everything all in one place? So it was a natural evolution for me. And I love this medium of podcasting. For me, it's one of those that it gives everybody equal footing. It gives everybody equal ground. And it's been interesting once again to see it kind of evolve over the last decade, really. Because I'd been on a few podcasts probably about 3-4 years prior to me starting mine. And the whole industry's been around for about 15 years or so. It is nothing new. It's been around, but lately broadcast has realized that we have stolen their listenership.
Absolutely. That brought up a great point. I was going to ask you a question. I thought when podcasting and Pandora and all this other stuff came out, they were going to phase out radio. Do you think radio is ever going to go anywhere? Or it has a solid footprint as far as
it's got its use, it's got its place. Most definitely. That's like saying broadcast TV is going to go somewhere. I really can't see that happening. Not in any modern aspect anyway, where it would like be wiped out by digital platform or anything. More the fact of we are incorporating together. The one thing that I talk about regularly on the Dudes and Beer podcast is never forget, control of the internet was given to the FCC.
Oh,
the whole purpose of and their charter was never rewritten. And their charter is literally to sell and regulate airwave and broadcasts. That's it. All they're supposed to do is sell and regulate frequencies for broadcast and what goes out on those broadcasts. So the question really comes to bear, how long before we are liable to their laws?
Yeah, that's a great point.
How long before we will need a station ID? It's already getting to the point, like if you look at the fact of over COVID, everybody started streaming on Facebook, so much so that Facebook had to shut down many live streaming functions, because otherwise they would be considered a content producing company. You see, like that's why suddenly you saw all these live concerts stopping. It doesn't really matter if it's your own original music, even as No Disassemble. I tried doing like an hour-long Monday meditation with my frequency meditation music I make. I get smacked on Facebook with my own music.
Really?
Like, it's my music. And they're like, oh, copyright violation. Yeah, I know, I own it.
Yeah, I know. It was one of I think Mark Eddy.
Yeah. There's no music that I've made that has not been copywritten yet, but has like a lot of the meditation music I make has like raw tones underneath it, like 528 hertz, for like theta wave production, things like that. So I've originally created all this music. The only thing that would be familiar would be that tone in the background. So you're telling me that tone of 528 hertz is kicking off your algorithm with my new music that I produced, which has not been ASCAP'd and BMI'd yet? So it's interesting, the algorithms and the way that they work, but they literally had to go through and lock that down, because otherwise people were starting to complain that Facebook sucked. It was slow. It was horrible. It's like, yeah, people are having, like Willie Nelson did the Willie Nelson's Family Picnic, for crying out loud, live on Facebook. There were like 40,000 people tuned into his page for 8 hours.
Yep.
What the hell you think? Like, the server was not meant for that. It was meant for us to take our phone and go, hey, everybody, look, we're about to go into Disney World. Huh? See you soon. Like, That's what their video function was made for. So, yeah, it started junking up their algorithm, and it started making things slow, and it made a bad user experience. And then it was like, wow, wait a minute. We've been in front of enough courts and federal committees lately. Let's not go making ourselves into a content distribution platform and have to go back and redefine literally what our business is and what we do. They would have had to go before a whole new realm of committee hearings.
Do you think that has anything to do with right now where a lot of us, like even as we've noticed, like our reach has plummeted? Because before we could get, you'd get like the impressions type thing. You'd get, we'd easily get between like 500 and 800 impressions. Now we're lucky if it reaches 200.
Yeah. Now, granted, a lot of that has been IAB lockdown. IAB is the International Advertising Bureau, I believe it stands for, something along those lines. But they're basically the people that internationally come up with the advertising categories. Whether like your ad would fall into medical stuff, things like that. And if you've got a decent host, you can go in and select the categories that you have that advertising appears from, like, believe it or not, farmers markets, like local farmers markets and stuff, is one of the highest paid ones. So it's like if you can go in and enable the ads for like local farmers markets, even though the impressions are lower, the payout's like 3 times as much. So like even though you get 1 impression, it pays out as though it's 3. So there are all these little IAB games that you can play as far as advertising goes. And what's been interesting is that much like people are suffering Zoom fatigue, people are suffering content fatigue right now.
Yeah.
Straight up. Like the only way I can put it is they're spreed out. You know, like you go on those watching sprees where it's like, yeah, you know, this whole season just released. And like you just sit down and binge watch for like 3 days, that kind of stuff. People are binged out, man. We've been locked up for a year.
People want to get out. People want to do that. It's that's where I really like the way we branch out. It's like we have such different, and it's even like your show. You have such a variety of guests to where it's not the same thing over and over again. It's not like current events because you're like, oh, I don't really want to hear about the latest thing on, COVID, scroll. Now you're like, I saw you just talk to Jared Murphy. We had him on,
Oh, I love Jared. He's a great guy. We text back and forth all the time, actually. And I mean, even, a lot of the reason I started my show was because one of my dirty secrets in life, I guess I'm technically allowed to say it now. I don't say it a whole lot. But one of my dirty secrets in life is one of my broadcast jobs was an on-air producer for Alex Jones. Finding guests, finding the news stories and things like that. Now, my job was to mash buttons. My job was to literally man 3 computers and live inside this guy's head while he went off on his rants and did this and that. My job was to think of the fractal way in which his mind thought and preemptively think of articles that we'd talked about before and start bringing them up.
Oh, wow. So
you having them ready on computers so that whenever he would rabbit hole and go on to this topic from that one, I could be like, that article's up on computer 3 and start scrolling through and highlighting stuff and things like that.
Wow.
It was pretty intense. And it was one of those that after having worked in some local news before, having worked in local government AV, that kind of stuff, going and working in the side stream media like that, it was amazing to see the fact that literally the show concept was reading the news, literally reading the news. It's what he does. He's just got stacks of news and he reads news and then kind of riffs. And
then just goes,
he takes that news, puts it through the lens of history, and then extrapolates to the worst case scenario.
So coming from that industry, does clickbait media really hurt you if you put a real catchy title? And does it really hurt your ratings? Because all the stuff we read, it says, yes, it does, because they don't know where to broadcast it or this or that. From your standpoint, does that really hurt you as far as...
when it comes to your titles, it's all about SEO, really. The more evergreen you can make something, the better. Even though you're putting in something topical, to put in something that will be a question or a topic or a phrase, whole phrases work best. And putting things in that someone will always be looking for, and that's kind of where the word of SEO and keywords comes in. And that's literally like this nebulous topic in the world. And it's wild. And the reason why Alex rates so high and things like that on the internet and all that, even though he has been banned on every platform in the world, literally.
Yeah.
So much so that he started a platform called Banned Video. That's how banned he is. He started a platform. You're going to ban me. I'm just going to start a platform called Banned Video. Come on over, everybody.
Wow. Yeah.
And that's how his mind works. But the thing is, one of the things that I tell people all the time in our workshops and things like that is like him, hate him. Same thing with Rush Limbaugh. Like him or hate him, those are two people that are a prime example of how they have monetized and moved an audience.
Yep.
They have built an audience, built a community around that, and that is what they monetize. Rush Limbaugh was the major, like, if you didn't have the Limbaugh letter and you were a hardcore listener, you know, it was kind of like the people that the coast to coast insiders, you know, these were the people that really like pioneered what we're just now stepping into right now with this concept of Patreon and stuff like that, where it's like, if you like what I'm doing, I'm going to give you different content than what we're giving you here.
As long as you do this, because I remember that Limbaugh letter. It just had come in the mail, and it was stuff you didn't hear on the radio.
It was a physical letter, man.
Yep, it was a physical thing. The Limbaugh letter. Yeah. Oh, I mean, it's like Alex Jones. I mean, I still like the lexicon. It's the one word. Fantastical.
Yeah.
It's fantastical, and I've just ever since that's what it's always stuck with me. It's like nutraceuticals. You know, it's like when you come up with this thing, fantastical. Oh, fantastical.
I mean, you know, and like I said, like him or hate him, it was an eye-opening experience as far as media, and really for the fact of at that point it became an all-consuming part of my life, and still is, like, to the point that a lot of people ask me how I populate the Dudes and Beer Facebook group with so many articles so fast and with so much stuff. And it's like, I have an RSS aggregator on my phone. Like, I'm addicted to it. And the problem is, if you're not addicted to the news, if you're not reading like 2 sources you like, 2 that you don't like, and at least 1 to 2 from outside of the country, you're going to miss it.
Yep.
The prime example, even today, the news cycle was dominated with 3 stories. Bill Cosby got out.
Yep.
Donald Rumsfeld died.
Yep.
And I'm trying to remember they've decided to put together a panel on the insurrection. You know what hasn't been in the news? The actual panel that took place yesterday that was 3 hours long about the actual source of the coronavirus. Not in the news anywhere.
No. Yeah. No,
I listened to that. Like, I listened to the whole thing.
Have you had Charlie Robinson on your show?
Crazy. And it's one of those, like, every bit of this was there. It was all right there. And when they start showing like emails to Fauci, where it's like, here's the email that we were provided, 3 pages of black, literally just a black box on a page, redacted email, where it's like, what the what?
Yeah.
But these are the things that are out there that are happening daily. And if you're not immersed in media, you will miss it. And you will get the tide that you tend to follow, instead of everything that you really should, to be able to filter things out.
Have you had Charlie Robinson on your show?
No, I have not. I should.
You should get him on. Yeah, I think you guys would have an amazing conversation.
Absolutely.
With that one, I really do. It's it's one of those, like, we talk about stuff like some of the things like in the news. It's like for us, we're all here in Florida, so the Miami condo collapse has been the big news down here.
Yeah.
So when you said RSS aggregator, my antenna stood up. RSS aggregator, what does that stand for? What is that?
RSS is really simple syndication. That's what RSS stands for. And it's quite literally how your content gets from platform to platform. It's how bloggers get their content from platform to platform. It's how bloggers get followed by major news sources and vice versa. So pretty much anybody who's blogging, vlogging, podcasting, and putting news out has an RSS feed. And if you use like Feedly is the RSS aggregator that I use. You can use it in browser form. You can download the app and you literally go in and it's like, what do you want to look for? And it's like science. Ooh, look, popular mechanics, popular science. And you can just follow all of these news sources. And anytime new articles come up, it'll pop up right there in your Feedly. And that thing is constantly being updated. And the great thing is you can kind of not just craft, but you get to filter things at that point. And you really do get to make sure that, like, hey, if you wanted to follow something from Al Jazeera, you could.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be blocked by a browser or anything like that. And it's been really interesting to see what has happened over the last many years with that. And even now, like, I'm getting ready to, in December, completely rebrand the Dudes and Beer podcast.
Oh, really?
My beloved brand is going away. We will officially be the Curious Realm. And it's one of those things that I talk about all the time in podcast conferences and stuff like that is, that 6 month, 1 year, 3 year, 5 year plan for your show. Do you have it? Do you intend to be around that long? All that kind of stuff. And go ahead.
I was just wondering, not to cut you off, when is your next conference? We'd love to, do you ever come to Florida? We'd love to try to come to a conference. We know we got you firsthand tonight, but I'd love to come sit through one of your conferences.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I know my wife travels with Podcast Movement here and there. So I know she was out literally like right as COVID happened. Podcast Movement was there in Orlando. And she was out doing all of the icebreakers and teaching the concept of improv for hosts, that kind of stuff. And she was calling me like, I'm hoping we're going to be able to get on a plane to come home.
Yeah.
Like we may have to rent a car and drive home.
Because you mentioned that, about the RS aggregator and all this other stuff. We've strictly grown organically. We've paid for no ads. In the beginning, we paid for a little bit, but RSS aggregator, there's a lot of podcasts just pump out content like yourself and just can't figure out how they do it. I know other people have jobs and, different hobbies and stuff, and podcasting seems like a full-time job to some of these people, but they actually use other software that we wasn't privy to, and they pump out content like that, and they get their followers up from pumping out lots of content. So
yeah. Well, and not just that, but there are great people out there like Tiffany Youngren. She's out in a lot of the podcasting groups. She runs a program where they basically hook you up with like a virtual assistant, and what they do is take your media and chop it and like turn one piece of media into 25. Because what a lot of people don't realize is, especially in the social media world, like, it's a different form of interaction in every single platform. Every platform. From the way it interacts to the way hashtags work to the way that you add a page to even like the size of the video or the length of the video that'll fit, So if you're making a video clip, what may be good for Facebook may not be good for Insta, even though they're the same company. And good Lord, man, LinkedIn has just become like a hot burning trash heap.
Well, it's funny you said that, because there's been people that have said, there's people that have said, you should get on LinkedIn. And I'm like, I've been hearing from a lot of people. It's like, if you are not in there, don't even waste your time right now.
Yeah, no, if you're not already in the system, don't. Like, my LinkedIn game is strong, and it's strong because I've been on there for over a decade, and the connections I've had, like, back in the day, it was one of those, like, if you wanted to professionally connect with people, you go to LinkedIn. And the way I get a lot of my guests that I've gotten for years, people like from Lockheed Martin, stuff like that, there are people that have spoken on my stage. Like... Like, I'm in the back running their PowerPoint, and we talk and we chat. And, hey, man, I'd love to have you on my show. And by the time they hit the coffee place, they've gotten my LinkedIn invite. And we're having a conversation, and then their connection leads to another. So there is a great realm there, but it's just become one of those where it's like, dude, seriously, I do not need to buy services. Thank you so much. I realize that I own a company, but I don't need you to come like recraft 18 websites for people. Like, it's been horrifying. It's like to see it go from this great platform to like, hey, here's how you can go cold call people on social media. It's even the same way in a lot of the podcast groups, you know,
absolutely.
Where it's like, wow, that nobody even asked for you to solicit a service, yet still that there you are popping it up.
No, I know. It's just you get on here. It's like, hey, let me promote you under the like. No.
Yeah, and it's tough because, you know, Chris, like you were saying, everybody wants to have fun. Everybody wants to get into it. The question is, how deep do you want to tread in the waters? A lot of people, like Craig said, they may just want to have a show. They may not want to go full on professional. They may not want to, you know, incorporate video, things like that. So at what point do you decide that you're going to tread into deeper waters? At what point do you decide, hey, should we get a URL? You know, all that kind of stuff. For me, that's one of those, especially just for the price of URLs, just go buy it. But it blows my mind the number of people that just start a show and have not researched their name. You know, have not done the proper Google stalking like that to see if the name is taken.
Yeah, that was crazy. I mean, how long, guys? Would you say? I would say it was probably a good almost a week, 2 weeks of us trying to figure out what name we wanted to call ourselves.
Absolutely. And then when we got it, it seems like you speak something in the air. You know, phones are constantly listening. And it seems like you speak that, and I don't know if somebody has something where they hear it and then they buy the URL, and then you go and it's like Three Beards Podcast is not available. But there's no Three Beards Podcast, so somebody owns the URL that you wanted.
Yeah. Here's a prime example. Actually, I've got up my if you Google Dudes and Beer. I pop up, the Dude's Brew pops up, which is a brewing company. But in addition to that, way down at the bottom of the search, let's see, is it even on here anymore? Oh, wow, I think I took them over finally. But there is a Dudes and Beers podcast out of France that existed before me, and I had no idea. I had no idea that these dudes even existed. It was absolutely wild. And when I found them, it was like, oh my God, these guys are out there too. And they had so much stuff out there. It took me forever to take them over on Google search. And now, like you can see, like 5 years later, you can't even find them. I want to say that they still have like a Facebook presence, things like that. But it's absolutely wild just to know that even a name like Dudes and Beer. Once again, I'm glad I got it when I did, but it's to the point now that I can't even place a Facebook ad. I placed a targeted Facebook ad for Talking Sound, paid $30 over a month and got 1,000 new followers to my page. Great ad turnaround. It was fantastic. Even SEO people I know were like, wow, that's amazing. Tell me what parameters you put into your audience to get that. I tried doing the exact same ad for Dudes and Beer, and Facebook refused it because they do not promote alcohol. Now, I am not Dudes and Michelob.
Yeah.
I'm not like Dudes and Budweiser. It's just beer. It's just a beverage. And oddly enough, we don't even talk about beer anymore.
That's weird.
So what you saying that not to get nobody shadow banned, but how is my favorite guy on here? That's all he does is make mixed drinks and stuff. I mean, I'm not going to say any names, but hey, how is he on Facebook?
Just because he's on there and his content is on there doesn't mean that his ad has that in it.
Are you talking about the tipsy dude?
Yeah, you called him out. Now, if he gets banned, thank you, Chris.
I didn't say his whole thing. I just said tipsy. I didn't say anything yet. So it's
so like he posts a lot of ads a day and just makes drinks, and I'm like, okay.
Huh.
Yeah, it's like for us, like you were saying, it took a while for us to get there. I mean, now if you type up Three Beards podcast, we basically we populate, pretty much the entire first page of the Google search. There's one that jumps in there, Three Beards Brewing.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the same thing. It's one of those. It was amazing. But when we looked at it, we're like Three Beards. We looked in there. Nobody had it at the time. So we went, boom, let's take it. So we have threebeardspodcast.com. So we just, because it was one of those, we were adamant when we did it, do not type it in, do not do anything. Because as soon as you start typing all this stuff in, boom, it is taken.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially if you've already started any kind of say. That's another thing that people don't realize is try to launch everything on the same day as much as possible. If you're starting a show, like try to launch. Basically, the idea is this is a white hat SEO technique. It's to basically bombard Google with all of this information on the same day about your show with the same description and the same tags and everything else. So you basically start your Twitter on the same day, your Facebook, and like, boom, launch all of it on the same day. And Google just gets an overload of information about you and your stuff in one day. Pretty interesting, but that's a great way to do a launch.
Well, that's a great tip for everybody too. It's just like, so anybody that's thinking about starting something like that, just take what Chris just said there, get everything ready, line up, have your idea what you want to do. And I mean, to be honest, like setting up our domain and everything, that wasn't a long process. That was simply type it in, HostGator, paid the money, boom, it was ours. It was right there. Then you simply go Facebook. So you're looking at maybe an hour total time, and you have everything just blam. You've thrown up all over Google.
You make those pages on Facebook, Twitter, and all that. You can make it where it's public or private. So just make it private until the day that you are ready to launch everything. That helps. Good, clear things, good, clear descriptions. One of the big things that I try to explain to people is try to have at least 150 words minimum in an episode description. Try to have a couple of, if it's possible, in your hosting platform, or if you're like myself and you use WordPress to put everything out, make sure that you have plenty of outbound links. Make sure that you have images that are alt tagged and that have outbound links. The things like that are so absolutely important. Google is looking, if you can, one of the other things as far as consistency is, of course, releasing on the same day, especially if you have your own URL. If Google knows the fact that it can get this kind of content with quality backlinks, an image, an embedded player, an embedded video, every Wednesday at your site, like it knows to direct traffic there from people that are looking for that kind of content. So yeah, like the algorithms are absolutely intelligent in that way. I see sometimes people like, hey, here's a show, and like that's their show description, and it's like, wow, that explained nothing. It will do absolutely nothing for SEO. And the crazy thing is, especially now, like if you have a website, things like that, the Google search algorithm changes about every 6 months, about every 4 to 6. And one of the main things that it's looking for now is mobile compatibility and speed. And
Yeah.
the idea of not having content in a post, just having like a sentence, things like that, Google actually almost considers that spam content.
Oh, really?
And will almost start delisting your site because of lack of detail in a post. Things like that.
So it's better, like, because we have our website, but we don't have a lot like in the way of like blogging or anything. So would it be better to start getting something like that on the site?
Well, not necessarily that you need a blog or anything like that. It's just that whenever you put your episode posts up, make sure you're putting 150 words in it, because that's technically a blog post.
Austin,
you know, all that kind of stuff. So
yeah, because I know that's one thing that we need to get connected, is like we don't have it to where it's linked directly to our show, where our show comes up on here yet.
Yeah, and there's a lot of that stuff. Once again, it comes from years of doing website work for people, and that kind of stuff. I think it was you, Craig, that I was talking to earlier about having to kick a couple projects for people out today, and that's what I was doing, was going through and setting up SEO stuff on their website, things like that, because they'd changed their descriptions and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, it's an ever evolving game, and it really is one of those, like, podcasting becomes a part-time job rapidly. And that's, once again, just to kind of loop it back, that's why a lot of people experience that pod fizzle. They realize that there is actually an amount of work that goes into putting something out, at least something of some decent quality.
Yeah, it's one of those, like, we're trying to figure out, like, roles, like how to keep on it, because it's one of those things. It's so critical. Yeah. If you post once every 2 weeks on Instagram, tweet like maybe once every 7-8 days, you're going to get some followers, but you're not going to get put out. Your impressions aren't going to be there. You're not going to get out there. Yeah. It's like, but if you're constantly doing it, then it's you seem to have so much more success. And that's where we've been talking. It's like, instead of what all of us just like, well, if we didn't get to this time, it's like, no, we got to try to get it to where we're putting something up on a regular basis.
Yes, absolutely.
But a RSS aggregator mitigates that problem for you, correct?
It can, if you're looking for just additional content on your site, things like that. You can use RSS aggregators to, like, build a news function, like to build a news page where news stories just kind of pop up and then go away, things like that. So it can be a way to kind of build traffic to your site, where you can be like, hey, if you like following the news that we talk about on the show, we get it all from the website. Stop on by and check out the new news feed feature, that kind of stuff. So you can use it in that, right? Like, for instance, on my network, that's one of the things that I insist, is that you have an RSS feed prior to me onboarding you. I want you to own all of your content. I don't want to own your content. I don't want to be anywhere near owning your content. I am here as a distribution spoke in the wheel that is your show. That's my job as a network, is to get people on platforms, get people hooked up with possible monetization, things like that. That's my job. A show is supposed to be out there promoting their show anyway. You're supposed to be, so, like, my hope is that you come in and we've already got an RSS feed for you, and all I have to do is add that to my system, and whenever you post an episode, it posts on our stuff automatically.
So for our audience, and for us as well, what is your starting packages start out at, as far as helping somebody grow an audience, as far as being posted on your site that you're showing us right here?
Well, I mean, granted, the network is a little bit different than than Podcast Cadet, things like that. We have stuff with Podcast Cadet. I'll work with just about anybody on pricing, things like that. But we have stuff as low as like $50. We have packages even for podcast production as low as $75 an episode. So I try to make things extraordinarily affordable. Like I said, I come from the world of rock and roll. I know what it is for musicians to literally be making their gas money and a couple of beers. I know what it is for podcasters to be doing something out of a passion project. I offer customized pricing for that reason, because someone who's doing a true crime show from their back bedroom next to their kid's room, like in a linen closet, is totally different than like a corporation doing an internal podcast for their IT department and branding that. Like the needs of the client are totally different. The technological aspects of what the client can provide me are totally different. So it really is an individual consultation basis. That's kind of the way that we've done it. Is we kind of chat with you, find out where you are in the process, and then customize our help to you specifically. So, yeah. And the network, quite honestly, I don't charge people to be part of the network. Like, joining the network is absolutely free. We have a monetization partnership with everybody that is a member of our network, but that's literally like a 75-25 split. 75 going straight up to the artists and the shows. The other 25% somewhat pays the bills for the network, and takes care of hosting fees and all that kind of stuff. But my idea is, if I can be there, because my shows have been around long enough, at least my two, and my wife's show has been around long enough now that I'm not getting a lower hosting package anywhere. Like, the packages that I'm paying for aren't getting smaller.
Yeah, no.
So it's not that I'm trying to make money. It's more the fact of, if I can find other podcasters that are out there and they're hustling and they're on their game, and all they need is that leg up. All they need is somebody there to kind of help support them a little bit. And because, hey, like you were saying, Chris, like, it becomes a full-time job, man. Like, if you wanted to spend 12 hours tomorrow looking up potential platforms for distribution, I bet you would end it at 12 hours and go, damn, man, there was about 3 more hours I could have done. Guaranteed. Like, in the last week, I know I have learned about 3 more platforms in the last week.
Wow. and you do this every day.
And this is what I do. Like, and so it's one of those, like, it's ever evolving. And just like the news or anything like that, you've really got to stay on top of it. If you're not following the industry, if you're not keeping up with the trends, you're doing yourself a huge disservice as a podcaster. And right now, especially, if you are not on the trend, everybody, I could not get more of a shooting a flare in the air moment of warning for people. Go buy your URLs. Go buy your URLs. That's all I can say. Go do it. It will disappear. The show will disappear. You will find out that you have another show with your name. All kinds of stuff. It happens all the time, and it only gets worse. The situation of being able to find them as shows come around more and more.
Yeah, that's like how we started. That was the first thing we did, was we bought our website domain.
Yeah, even if you don't know how to build a website yet, doesn't matter. Go buy it. Just go buy it. It's like $5 a year, folks, literally. Unless you're buying like a whole word URL, like cathouses.com. That's going to cost you like $15,000, something like that, because You know, it's a whole word search. Cat is something that people will be looking for regularly. Houses is something that people will be looking for regularly. So whenever you put those two together, you come up with a URL that's worth a lot of money, because organically people, like, it's going to pop up in somebody's search because somebody's searching for cat. Like, they could be looking for cat food, but because cat's in there, cat houses is still going to be on like page 10 or whatever.
So does URLs prices ever change? So say we get a lot of traffic. So we get a lot of traffic. Our URL may go up as more people type beards, 3Beard.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. The more traffic your website gets, the more valuable that URL space is on the internet, everything else. And I think that's it. I think that's kind of the short-sighted aspect that most podcasters have with monetizing their shows. That I think is a question that people often think about too late in the game as to whether or not they want to monetize or whether or not they should monetize. And it's one of those, if you think you might want to monetize, go ahead and treat it as though you're monetizing, like from the get-go. And when it, yes, Mona, it does always boil down to money. That's one of the things that I tell people all the time. It's two factors. Literally 2 factors. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be my professional world of AV. It could be website design. It could be social media outreach. Does not matter. It's one of 2 things, time or money. And money is time, and time is money.
Yep.
So if you don't have the money to pay somebody to do social media outreach, I hope you have 3 hours a week. And this is quite literally the formula right here, because I have 3 of you guys on screen. So I'm going to use the example of a band that I used to use whenever bands would ask me to be their sound guy or their producer. It's like, okay, here's the thing. The formula of success works like this. For every 1 hour we spend in this studio, we must all spend 3 hours working on this band outside of this studio. I don't care if it's putting up flyers. I don't care if it's social media work. I don't care if it's work on the back end of a website. We will all, outside of this studio, work 3 times as much every week as what we put in this studio. And if you all stick to that, and you all do that, and you're all pulling equal weight on that, like, you may all have different aspects, different facets of the game that you're good at, that you excel at. Find that, use that to the advantage of the team. Like, as a solo podcaster, I get to do all of it. My fingers are bloody in every pie in my house of podcasting.
Oh yeah.
But y'all get to equally distribute that weight. And if one of y'all is a little bit better at the social media engagement than the other person, use that, utilize that. You know, if one of you is a little bit better at outreach to local sponsorship, just to bring that back to where I was going, use that, utilize that, because a lot of people, they think about going to Podcorn. They think about, you know, like, why am I not doing an ad for Anchor? Things like that. Great, fantastic. But is that what you want your brand to be? And that's what you have to think about. Like, we could all be getting Squatty Potty money, right?
Oh yeah.
As long as you got the numbers, you can go to Squatty Potty and get the money. And hey, great product from like the handful of people I know that own a Squatty Potty. They swear by it. Not even gonna lie. However, are you going to be the Squatty Potty show? And that's what you have to ask yourself. And whenever you listen to Mark Maron, any of those, like, yeah, you could get stamps.com. If you had the traffic of Mark Maron, all you got to do is contact them. There's a form, but they're going to ask you for the traffic of your website. They're going to ask you for all of those metrics. However, if you have a website, if you have widget space options, if you have header and footer space options, things like that, you can be selling a local business a banner ad to a niche audience for a low penny and be turning a profit as a show. You could be selling somebody a rotating widget ad on your website for like $50 a month. That's like for a business advertisement, that's nothing. That's nothing. And when you're talking about the fact of that image is now a backlink, the image of their stuff on the sponsors page is a backlink. The listing of them on your favorites page, where it's just links of stuff, is a link. Every time you put them as a hashtag in social media, like it's this SEO and metric that you should be making people pay for. It's the fact that you're putting out an episode every week on Facebook and you have how many hundreds of eyes on that? Now, the odds on favorite, especially if you have a product or a company whose ideology fits within your show or fits within your show's programming tract, be it authors, what have you. Like that changes things entirely. Like, for instance, years ago, I took out an ad in my church bulletin, and I recently ran across the paperwork. It was like $300, and I got it for 6 weeks. So I paid $50 a week. And the ad was, you took a business card and cut it in half. It was about that big. It's a tiny little ad like that big for my business. Bam. And that's what I paid $50 a month for, or $50 a week for. That was $50 a week that I paid for that ad. That did not guarantee that ad ended up in front of any eyes that were interested in the services that I provided. Whereas if somebody is advertising on your show and it's a niche product or a niche service or a niche book company, what have you, you've now got the odds of turning that sale around are exponentially larger. Even though you've got a smaller number of eyes on the ad, the interested eyes on the ad go up.
That's cool. Yeah.
So to think about your advertising in that way and to use that as part of your pitch deck whenever you're approaching a sponsor, that kind of stuff. When they're like, hey man, if you got a friend whose wife started up a cupcake company, bro, $20 a month, man. I'll give you the family discount.
Yeah.
Hashtag Ginny's Cupcakes in every episode post.
Yep. Hashtag nanny cakes.
Like if you want ad, like you could literally be selling all the lower thirds that you see up over me and everything on there and that y'all were popping up. Man, you could be selling an ad space to a local business right there in the bottom corner of Chris's box. Yep. Like it's just the question of, have you thought about monetizing that?
See that, Pepsi? Come on. Yeah. I've been plugging you every show. Come on, Pepsi.
Yeah. You're gonna have to get some Mark Maron numbers before Pepsi hops in.
Yeah, I know. No, I don't know if you saw Mona's thing. She was begging us not to be the Squatty Potty show. And I was like, when that kind of goes back to like Chris, he was wanting to get like these, adult these adult stores. Like, what if we reach out to them? I'm like, I do not want to be sponsored by dildos.com. I do not want that as my sponsor.
Realsil.com. Like,
I'm like, I don't
doll companies.
Yeah. I don't want to be sitting here. It's like, I want to talk about the latest, greatest dildo. I'm like, no, that's not happening.
Yeah. It would be interesting though to get a sex doll on the show, and then have them as a recurring guest, so that you can see the software updates and how they interact with you.
Yeah, it's like, and for the Stacy report, let's go to Stacy right now.
Well, I actually for a little while, and I'm about to start producing him again, but for a little while, whenever I had guests like Graham Phillips on, talking about like Wisdom Keepers of Stonehenge, his new book, things like that, I made a little segment at the beginning of my show called Ask Alexa that I used on social media to kind of promote the upcoming episode. And then we'd play it before we had the expert guest on. And I would ask Alexa the same questions that I asked my guest.
Oh, nice.
Like Alexa, what's Stonehenge? And like Alexa starts explaining, and then like, Alexa, what's a sarsen stone? And like she goes through the whole geology of the blue stones at Stonehenge. And what's a megalithic culture? I don't know the answer to that. But there's a magical unicorn in the back of your castle. Would you like to play with it? It's like, what the hell are you talking about? There's a magic unicorn. Like, that's just what you go to as your default, is trying to get me to buy a magic unicorn app.
Oh, I just love it when Alexa just randomly just says something to you.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
My personal favorite that I paid. I think I paid like $3 when it came out, but I bought the Samuel L. Jackson app.
Oh,
that's well worth the money, folks. There's nothing like having Samuel L. Jackson tell you a joke.
Yep.
Like, it's classy. You go, hey, Samuel L. Jackson, tell me a joke. And Samuel L. Jackson comes on and tells you a knock-knock joke.
Hey, Alexa, did you order the dog food? You better mother effing believe I did.
Yeah, exactly. Man.
Yeah, you're like, oh, this is awesome. Yeah.
Oh, it's great. Yeah. So it's been interesting to see that rise in artificial intelligence and AI, and even the use of AI, like we were talking about earlier in Facebook, things like that. The algorithms that they have that are watching content that are there. And yeah, it will come down to the fact that we as podcasters will start seeing the same fines that radio stations do. We will start seeing FTC fines. You know, I'm waiting for the day that I see the headline of podcaster fined $10,000.
Yeah, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if it comes down to that one where all of us are like, hey, remember those days when we used to be able to say what we used to be able to sound like?
Yep.
Samuel L. Jackson. Now everything's just like, hey guys, we're boop.
Well, and you know, like
it.
I said earlier, with the FCC holding reins of the internet, how long will it be before any URL owner, period, needs an FCC license to have a URL? You know, it'll be interesting to see if that ever becomes the case. I know a lot of tech people that are like, that'll never be the case. But hey, we've said a lot of things would never be the case over the last few years that have definitely come to be the case. Where it's just weird.
In theory, that would wipe out like 25% of the podcast, or maybe a little bit higher, right? If they say you need a license, and the license they start out pretty high, I'm sure, right?
Well, it'd knock out a lot of free options.
Yep.
Like immediately you wouldn't be having no free platforms anymore. And even right now, it's interesting to see, because like the Clubhouse space has picked up really big, but I've definitely seen like lo-fi listening rooms going on in Clubhouse and stuff like that. So it's like, how are they handling that? And how are they stopping that? How are they stopping DJs from just hopping on and doing stuff? My network's actually partnered with a platform out of Austin, Breach.tv, which is really cool. The owner of that and the creators of that preemptively went to ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, all of these musical rights corporations, and made agreements with them on monetization. So if you're a cover band that does like Led Zeppelin music, you can go post your videos there. And if you're monetized with them, Led Zeppelin will get their penny off your dollar before you ever see your dollar. Like, why is YouTube not doing that? Instead, they just mute the content.
Yep.
And really what it comes down to is want of accountability. You know, I mean, that's something on the algorithmic programming side that Breach saw fit to take care of from the ground up, that YouTube has just kind of had to deal with on the back end, you know? Like they've just kind of had to deal with the wake of things as they've happened, not necessarily be able to get out in front of it, you know? Like when they started, once again, much like how the Facebook streams started, and it just like Tom and Jerry friggin' snowballed down the hill, you know. Very much the same way. YouTube was created for people to put out original content. And then, people started doing like DJ sets and posting all kinds of stuff. So, we'll see what happens content-wise with the future of a lot of things like that. It's really going to become the algorithms game over the next few years when it comes to that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so real quick, since we're wrapping up here, I want you to plug your stuff again for you too, and I'm going to share it on the screen as we're talking about it. We're going to start
promotion.
Yes, gratuitous self-promotion time for the next minute or so here. So we're going to start here.
Let's see if I still have this, because I actually pre-produced the commercial and I no longer do my live on-air throw. But if you're interested in starting a podcast for yourself, friends, family, church, school, fun, whatever, stop on by podcastcadet.com today. We are your source for branding, social media, podcast production, everything. So stop on by, check it out. One-on-one consultation in the world of podcasting is what we specialize in, with helping creators navigate the waters of podcasting. How was that?
That was awesome.
Aimless enough?
And then, then you got HC Universal Network.
Absolutely. That's really the home site for all the shows that I produce, that I'm in, my wife's shows, and about another 10 or 12 podcasts on there. You know, oh, wow. Rebecca put out a show today. Cool.
Yep. She's on there. And then you've got TalkingSoundShow.com.
Yep.
The Talking Sound Show. And then you've also got the NoDisassemble.com.
Yep. NoDisassemble.com. You can actually, if you're an Android user, you can see there is a free app where you can download and check out the music, all kinds of stuff, everything from brainwaves to electronic stuff.
Take that, Apple.
There's also a direct link on the HC Universal Network site for our Android app. Only available exclusively on the sites. I do not want to put them on major platforms because I don't want anybody's privacy being taken. So if you want our app, feel free to just click that little button that says new app, and it will, like, on your mobile device, just immediately pop up a download link. And then whenever you click the download, it just says install on your mobile device. So super easy. And same thing with Dudes and Beer. We have our own app there as well. All kinds of stuff. You can listen to the shows live. You can chat in questions, all kinds of stuff. There's even a tip calculator. So if you're out there and need to split tips up in the new post-COVID world, enjoy the Dudes and Beer tip calculator.
Yeah, I always, last little party thing. I always kind of make fun of it when they're doing the tip calculator. I'm like, good Lord, how cheap are you? They're like, well, I got to figure this out. You don't have to literally hit to the penny on a 20%. It's like, it's $18.98 for your check. Give them $5.
Yeah.
I wanted, no, come on, quit being cheap. God, I mean, you got to sit your butt in a booth and somebody brought your food as you were, I want my refill, and you're sitting here telling me that that's only worth $3. Now, give them a $5 or sit your ass down and just go to McDonald's.
That's it.
Because you don't want to pay for the tip. I'm like, God, cheap people. So it's like, if you go to a restaurant, please, people tip. They're not paid a lot. Pay tip them. Yeah. So, no. All right, sir. Well, hey, have a great night. I really appreciate you coming on. Guys. Yeah, everybody check, because like you said, it's going to rebrand, but I mean, we're talking, amazing. You're at 300.
CuriousRealm.com is already there.
Yep.
Like, I didn't even tell anybody about it and that's how you brand, folks. Don't tell anybody about it until the website is there and built.
And then you just
nobody even knew that I was rebranding my show. My wife didn't even know. She came in one day and was like, "Oh, whose website is that?" I was like, "It's mine."
Wow, that's pretty awesome. That's an amazing one. Who's that then? Oh, that's me. I've already been working on it.
It's me. So yeah, CuriousRealm.com. It's literally a page per page copy of Dudes and Beer, everything except episodes. So the document vault is there if you're into declassified government documents, programs, things like that. Free PDFs. Go check it out.
Awesome. Well, sir, I really appreciate you coming on, man. And it's like, thanks again. That was awesome. We will have to keep in touch, and everybody, like you said, Podcast Cadet. If you want to kick it off and you want to start off pretty much on the right foot, you want to escape all the pitfalls like a lot of people do right in the beginning. That is a great way to start that off. So everybody check podcastcadet.com. Go support them. Way of thanking him for being on the show. So thank you, sir. We will talk later. And thanks for all the helpful advice and talk. That was a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
All right, everybody. This episode was brought to you by Nanny Cakes. Go to Nanny Cakes 407 on Facebook or give her a phone call at 407-923-2898. That's here in the Central Florida area. You're going to get an amazing cake. If you're outside of the Central Florida area, we will give you a nice signed and autographed spork because you're going to get a cake ball. That's how it's going to show up to you if it gets shipped, because there's not really any way to make a nice looking cake, but it's going to taste amazing. And it will, like you said, I will personally sign that spork to make sure that it was from us. So everybody go to redbubble.com. Three Beards Podcast is our new merch store. You can also get that through threebeardspodcast.com. We have that linked up there. Like, subscribe, follow, give away firstborn, whatever it takes to like us and follow us. We appreciate it, everybody. And we are broadcast at 10 p.m. every Thursday night on Patriot Radio, courtesy of the Xeno Radio app. Download that. Brought to you by J&J Beard Co. out of New Jersey. Go to jjbeardco.com and thank them for rebroadcasting on there. Everybody, once again, thank you for watching. Chris Jordan, thank you for being on here, being an amazing guest. Everybody, like I said, go that list of sites, Podcast Cadet. Go get them, especially if you're wanting to do that. Check him out on, you got the Dudes and Beer while it lasts before that disappears, but you'll watch that. You'll still be able to see those on archives. And, UC Network, go check them out too as well. Show them some support for that. Everybody, appreciate it. We will see you next week with a couple new shows. Good night.